Hey, Dr. C with you. So let's talk about some solutions for thyroid symptoms. And this is about how to regain your energy. Over all the years that I've helped people with thyroid disease, this has been like one of the couple of biggest symptoms. And this one affects so many others. When energy is not at your best, it affects just every facet of quality of life. You can't do the things you'd want to do. Otherwise, you limit the time you can spend with loved ones. You can't achieve the things that are important to you. And this can affect physical energy, like your movement, your ability to do things just around the house, your enjoyment of exercise, your recovery from that. It also will affect mental energy. And that's things like memory, word recall, name recognition, inspiration, creativity, but then also mood. How apt we are to feel down about ourselves, how easily we get anxious or upset. These are all related to energy. And there's even a tie-in between energy and body weight. When we're not generating energy properly, we store too much of what's there. We're burning it and we're not storing it. So these things go hand in hand, and they're so pivotal. Commonly with thyroid disease, people are told that, this is as good as it gets, that your levels are normal, you're on medication, and you're kind of sent on your way. Or in natural medicine, people can be just given a lot of pills to take, lots of things to do, and almost no seeming end to the whole process. But they're not at their best, and you can be, and I want you to be. So in this video, I'll talk through 10 things you can do to help really regain your energy and feel better again. First one might be surprising. I mentioned a moment ago, but body weight, so weight and energy can go together. Now, what that means is extra weight can also cause fatigue. And by extra weight, it doesn't mean that massive amounts of weight have to be lost or that huge amounts of weights have to be there for it to be a problem. It's a little bit of weight in the wrong places. We've heard a lot about, belly fat, about visceral fat, but it's even different than that. There's a thing called organ fat. There's fat that builds up inside the organs. And organs, specifically, we're talking about your liver and your pancreas. So how much weight, how much fat are we talking about? It's crazy. It can be a couple of grams. So a gram is like the mass of a paperclip. And no joke, like 2 of those in the organs, that can be the difference between being fully diabetic and completely normal. So that little bit of weight in the organs has huge effects. Why does it do that? Well, there's compounds called adipokines. And these are inflammatory mediating compounds that activate the immune response. These are a big deal. These are a subset of cytokines. Cytokines got a little more publicity during the pandemic because people learned that they were the cause of a great deal of the death and the complications from COVID, part of the body's own immune response. Yeah, inflammation is not something that occurs randomly. It's always started for some reason. And one of the biggest drivers of it can be just a little bit of extra weight in the wrong places. So that inflammation can also be a big driver of fatigue. When the body's inflamed, it intentionally puts more energy into storage and rest and less energy into burning and activity. So a little extra body weight can be a driver of that. And that can also be the solution for it. And by the solution, it doesn't mean losing, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. It's often a matter of like 3 to 5% of body weight. For most adults, that's like 5, 10 pounds. The metabolism reset is a program that's been really consistent for all people to get there within just about 28 days. Many people find that the first cycle through, they may wish to have more total weight loss, and that's okay. But towards the goal of regaining health or regaining energy, almost everyone can do that with just one single round of the metabolism reset diet. So yeah, consider extra body weight as a big driver of fatigue. And if your weight is not where you feel that it should be, where you feel your best, you may not need to look any further than that. It can be just that simple. Next one is iron. And this is so important with thyroid disease for lots of reasons. So those who are prone to thyroid disease are mostly adult women, and those are also the same demographic that's prone to have chronic iron deficiency. They're low in iron because of just menstruating. A menstrual cycle can be a loss of like 60 milligrams of iron, and the body can only absorb about 1/10 of a milligram per day. So some heavy periods, and you can fall behind in ways that you just may not catch up on, ever. And it doesn't even mean being overtly anemic. The more subtle early levels of being low in iron can be enough to cause problems when your thyroid is off. With perfect thyroid function, you probably got a big leeway of iron in which you'll do fine. But if your thyroid is marginal, your body is extra sensitive to being just a little bit below optimal on iron. We see this show up by ferritin levels dipping below somewhere in the 50s or 60s, but this is a big driver of that. The other connection is that upwards of 30 or 40% of those with thyroid disease have another autoimmune condition that makes it harder for their bodies to absorb iron properly. We call this atrophic gastritis or thyrogastric syndrome. So those factors make people really prone to be behind in it, and it's not always easy to build up. I did make Easy Iron a new supplement, and I'm really jazzed about this. I've been happy with the feedback we've got. It's better absorbed and it's better tolerated. Iron, the problem is that you got to take a lot for it to work, and many, if they take enough to be effective, it just tears their stomach up and they don't feel well. But Easy Iron works differently for a lot of reasons. Most do fine on one single capsule a day. You can take it with meals, and typically we can see iron stores come back even in many that have atrophic gastritis. So iron's a big deal. Now, number 3 is lowering antibodies, so thyroid autoimmunity. This is a really important distinction. Thyroid autoimmunity is a thing that causes thyroid disease and causes there to be too little thyroid hormone coming out. So many people have two things going on at once. Their thyroid's underperforming and the immune system is attacking the thyroid. And for so long, doctors assumed that the underperforming thyroid was the cause of a lot of symptoms. But now what we're learning is that the changes in the immune system may be a bigger driver of symptoms for most people than the fact that the thyroid is not working perfectly. But yeah, the immunity is there. And we know this is happening when thyroid antibodies are high. For some people, this happens even if the thyroid antibodies are not elevated. So if your thyroid function has been abnormal, and there's no other obvious reason why for that, then do consider an ultrasound as well. Sometimes the autoimmunity shows up when it's looked at via imaging, even if the antibodies are negative. If your antibodies are up, what can you do about that? Thankfully, the iodine regulating program in the thyroid reset diet goes a long ways towards helping anti-thyroid peroxidase and anti-thyroglobulin levels come down. The other easy trick is the new blend called Antibody Support. This is a blend of 3 nutraceuticals that have all independently been clinically proven to safely lower thyroid antibodies. And yeah, good data. Human quality controlled blind placebo studies have shown that it works and it's safe and no big drawbacks to that. But yeah, consider the antibodies as another thing that can actually cause fatigue for people. The next 2, I'm going to talk about medications, thyroid medications and their role. So number 4, ways to help regain energy. Number 4 can be less medication. Now, what happens here, a couple of thoughts about this. One of which is, if you're overdosed, it can make you feel tired. So if you're taking overtly too much, how would you know you're overdosed? Well, the later stages of an overdose involve high levels of T4 and T3, but the earliest stages of an overdose involve the TSH dipping below range. That's the only thing that changes at the earliest stages of an overdose. And that can cause fatigue. So often doctors mean well, they want people to feel better, and in their minds they think that if too little can make you tired, that a little extra should help. Well, too little can cause fatigue, and that's true. And raising the doses can correct it in those cases. But once you've got enough, more than enough is more than enough. It's not helpful. And it can make your body fight thyroid hormone, and it can make you tired because you're taking too much. Now, the other part about less medication is that even if you're not taking too much, the more your body can make by itself, the better you tend to feel. There was actually a really big study done in Korea, and it showed that people who were making thyroid hormones had much better health outcomes than the same people who were taking thyroid hormones, even though they weren't taking crazy amounts. So the more your body can do on its own, the better you can feel, the better you can function. I've talked a fair amount about de-prescribing before, and we now know that for most people, they can take less medication, and many can take no medication and do just as well. Not only that, but they can often feel better and have more energy. So number 5 is also about medicine. This is about different medicine. I would really start with getting on amounts that are optimal for you, seeing how much your body can do by itself. But past that point, there are those that do better on different categories of medicine. So we've got a couple of main categories. The two that I find most appropriate and most reasonable to consider are natural desiccated thyroid and then purified forms of T4 only. There are options of T3 by itself. There's compounded options. There's other stuff out there. But for most people, natural thyroid, T4 only, or the two of those together I find are the best ways to go. Which one is best for you? Well, this is one to where I don't find lab tests helpful to predict who does better on which. It is a matter of trial and error. I would really think if you're already on one type of medicine, it's smart to dial that in as much as possible and get your body working as well as possible before changing it altogether. But if you've already done all of that and you're not yet at your best, you may change categories. So if you've been always on T4, you may do better on natural desiccated thyroid. The reason for that is that it includes additional hormones, specifically T3 and T2. These are ones that your body can make out of T4, but not everyone makes as much as they should. And some people either have to take too much T4 to get enough T3 or T2, or they take a good amount of T4 and there's too little of the others. But in those cases, natural thyroid can work better. Now, there are some people that don't do well on natural thyroid. Totally happens. When that does occur, though, that seems to be something that's more obvious. It's more apparent that on most any dose, people feel that they're getting too much and their heart is racing. So yeah, if natural thyroid's not a good fit, that's probably not mysterious. It's probably more obvious for you, and you probably haven't stayed on it. But a common thing, though, is that some people are on T4 only, and they're not yet at their best. And changing the type of medication could make a good difference for them. Number 6, this is a big one, and we've talked a bit about this before, but regulating iodine. Now, this matters even if you don't have a thyroid. What happens is that too much iodine, yes, it can drive thyroid antibodies like we mentioned. Yes, it can make you need more medication like we talked about, but it works in several ways, some of which apply to the thyroid and some of which apply to stuff going on outside the thyroid. So within the thyroid, too much iodine can be a factor just slowing it down, causing it to make less, but it can also drive the immune system to go crazy and start attacking the thyroid. So that's the stuff that goes on in here. But outside the thyroid, too much iodine can make your body not respond well to thyroid hormones. So even if you're taking them from a pill, they don't work as well if there's too much iodine. And the reason for that is the extra iodine slows your body's rate of activating the hormone and makes them harder to get assimilated inside the cells. And when I'm saying too much, I want you to catch a distinction. I'm not saying you're taking like just a crazy toxic amount. Sometimes that happens and that totally causes all these problems. But more often than not, people have just a greater sensitivity. We call this iodine intolerance. And yeah, those prone to thyroid disease, there's a bunch of common genetic variations that make them more susceptible. And these variations involve how the body metabolizes iodine. And they make it to where the amounts of iodine that would be harmless for other people can goof a lot of stuff up for those prone to thyroid disease. So do consider really dialing in your iodine. Look at the Thyroid Reset Diet and specifically the green light guidelines. Next up, so number 7, this is about your adrenal dysfunction. I like to call this HPA dysregulation. That's kind of a fancier term we see in medical literature, but adrenal stress, adrenal fatigue, adrenal dysfunction, this is the body's stress response. And what happens is that our cumulative, lifelong burden of stressors makes us less able to repair ourselves. So our bodies have like this one mode of being active and dynamic, and another mode of just calming down and like fixing stuff up. Some days around the house, you gotta go and work hard. And other days you gotta, sweep and do the laundry and, catch up on all the tasks and errands. It's the same way in your body. You need time to rest and repair and recover. And if you're stuck in a stress mode, you don't get enough of that. And lots of things don't work right. Your body doesn't generate energy properly then. But this is tied into what we call the adrenal function. So we know this is a problem when someone has recurrent symptoms at certain times of day. The adrenal glands also control the daily rhythm, like when you wake and when you go to sleep. So the cycle of the day is regulated by them. And if you notice that there's certain times in the day that you really feel better, you perk up, or certain times in the day you really crash, but there's a pattern to it either way, that means there's something wrong with adrenal dysregulation. They're not working great. And they're important and they can do better. Easy action step, visit adrenalquiz.com and answer some of those simple questions. The results will tell you if your adrenals are working well, and if not, they'll tell you how they're not working right and what you can do about that. But consider adrenal dysregulation as a really big driver of fatigue, and do not ignore it. When they're dialed in and working well, you can have good, steady energy throughout the day. When they're not working well, you'll find that you really need like caffeine for a pick-me-up, or you find yourself just craving sweet things or salty things to get more energy. But when they're working well, it doesn't happen that way. Energy is steady and even. So number 8, another way to get more energy, exercise, physical activity. And if you're doing some, think about ways in which you could progress that. Most of us could benefit with more than what we do. And I'm not saying that as a matter of like blame or guilt or anything at all. This is opportunity. This is simply a lever you can grab and pull to supercharge your body. So how much would you be doing to where it's probably not worth pursuing doing more? Easy rule of thumb is somewhere around an hour per day. There were some big studies looking at just well-being, quality of life, long-term health outcomes, and it contrasted those to different amounts of exercise. There's a point at where the further you get above an hour a day, the less clear the additional benefits tend to become. Now, really important thing, I'm not saying it's dangerous to do more than that. I'm just saying that if your goal is solely to boost energy, you may not, and you're already doing about an hour a day, you may not see reward by doing much more than that. Now, on the flip side, if you're doing an hour a day and that's pretty new for you and you're tired, you might have jumped onto it too fast. So exercise, kind of a funny thing, it's a stressor on your body. And we need some kind of healthy challenges to make us recuperate and adapt and get stronger and get better. But if the challenge is too much, we don't get better, we just get wiped out. So it takes having the right dose, the right amount of a challenge. And so exercise is super powerful, but it's also pretty precise. You can do too much, that is possible. And the best rule of thumb is just seeing how much you're doing now compared to what you've done on average over the last 2-3 months. And if this last week was a whole lot more than typical for you, you may need to back things down a bit. But yeah, in most cases though, there's an opportunity for more. And if you're going to move that way, take it steady. A typical approach is you can go up by somewhere around 10 to 20% per week and do fine. And think about that in terms of just minutes you spend on exercise. And then you'll hear the debates about, cardio, strength, yoga, whatever. All types are good. If there's any of those you're not doing, a good repertoire, a good mixture is probably ideal. In terms of bang for the buck for energy levels, our aerobic training by far has the best documentation. And if you were to do one thing, that's probably the one that can give the most benefit. Ideally, you wouldn't do just one thing. But if you're starting out, start with walking each day. Have a spot around your neighborhood. If weather's rough, grab a treadmill, hit a gym for a treadmill, or walk around a mall. Get a buddy in place. But start with that. And the ideal regime would be about an hour most days of aerobic activity, and a couple times a week, strength training for most body parts. Past that point, you may include a little bit of flexibility training, but that's really like a maximal regime for full body health can look like that. Wherever you are less than that regime, just take small steps closer toward that, and we can see great differences in energy and mood from it. The data shows it's more effective than medications for benefiting both. Number 9 is meal timing. These next two will talk a bit about timing of things. So when you have your meals, now we think a lot about what we have in our meals and how much we have in our meals, but the timing is a big deal. So if your energy is great and your body weight is where it should be, there's no good data saying that you would need to change how often you eat. There's been a lot of talk about Back in the 90s, it was eat often to rev up your metabolism. And then now in the 2010s, it's all about intermittent fasting to rev up your metabolism. It's kind of funny, but you can make an argument for almost anything. But what happens in evidence-based studies? What happens in the real world? So as far as body weight goes, the frequency of your meals doesn't make a lick of difference past your personal preference. You don't rev up your metabolism by eating more often. You also don't rev up your metabolism or burn more fat by eating less often. The total amount of food you eat is what affects that. But for energy levels, it can be different. There's a lot of folks that have a hard time keeping their blood sugar in the ideal ranges. Now, the more you make it easier on your body, the better that plays out. So not consuming things that make your blood sugar go crazy high or crazy low. Caffeine is a big stimulant. It raises blood sugar levels rapidly. A lot of people do caffeine but would avoid sugar, but caffeine works just like sugar. It's just that your body makes its own sugar when you ingest caffeine. So you don't want processed sugar. You don't want things that absorb fast, but you also don't want to have to make your own glucose out of muscle tissue. So if your diet is too low in carbohydrate, the only source of glucose is muscle tissue. And that's not a good source of glucose. Your body has to have glucose for your brain, and you don't want to make it from your muscles. So a good diet for energy is going to look like a nice mixture of slow-burning carbohydrate, lean protein, and healthy fats. And play around with meal timing. Again, more meals won't rev your metabolism, but it might make energy levels steadier. You can test a greater frequency of smaller meals. Many find that they do better if they're eating 3 solid meals, maybe some light snacks in between a couple of those. But the timing and the regularity is also important. So do make sure that when those meals occur is pretty close to the same time each day, that you've got a consistent pattern to it. If your body knows what to expect when, it will gear things up accordingly. But if meal times are all over the place, it's pretty common your energy levels will be all over the place as well. One last trick here is the more you work in resistant starch to your diet, the more your blood sugar levels stay steady for long periods of time. It can seem intuitive that if processed sugar makes your blood sugar disrupted, that therefore you want to avoid all foods that contain all carbohydrate. But it's just not true. Massive data sets have shown that people that consume the slowest burning forms of carbohydrate have the most stable forms of blood sugar. If we don't consume it from the diet, we have to use more stress hormone and make it from our muscle. And that's not a stable, steady source. Last one, also about timing. This is about the timing you wake up. So there's a million ways to talk about sleep hygiene and sleeping well and sleeping effectively. But the number one thing I'd encourage you to focus on is waking up at the same time each day. Ideally, you go to sleep at the same time as well. But again, the wake time is the highest single priority point. What happens is that the time you wake up is the time your body expects to wake up. And so if you're waking up at different times throughout the week, your body doesn't know what's going on. If you've traveled to the east and experienced jet lag, the same thing happens like on a weekly basis when your wake schedule is not consistent. The classic pattern is that people they've got life, they've got work, they've got school, and they get up for that on the weekdays, and they're skimping on sleep, so then they sleep in and compensate on the weekend. Well, what happens is that on the weekend, your body sets a new normal for the time you wake up. Your body's like, oh, I guess I wake up at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. That's my new normal time. So the next 3, 4, 5 days of the week, you're saying, what's up? I'm supposed to sleep until 8 o'clock, but I'm getting up at 6 o'clock. I'm not ready for this. And then finally you get into a groove, and like Thursday or Friday, you're used to it again. But now you push the schedule forward. So your body is always in jet lag especially during the first 3, 4 days of the work week. And this is a classic energy zapper. So wake up at the same time. Even if it means a matter of adjusting the night schedule, just wake up at the same time each day and you'll do so much better. Okay, so those were 10 tips. The cool thing is that more energy is not the latest biohacking trick. It's not about more stimulants. It's not about adding in energy boosters. Your body can work so well. Your body can give you all the energy you need. You just got to give it the circumstances that it needs. So these 10 tricks can help make that possible. And with better energy, you can thrive. You can really be there for your loved ones. You can make a big difference with the things that matter to you, and you can enjoy life a whole lot more. All right, Dr. C with you. Take great care. We'll talk again really soon. Bye-bye.